Our story begins in a dimly lit cave, infested with the monsters we love to hate. At this moment, they are celebrating the death of their leader. With the death of the boss, the opportunity arises to seize his weapons and possessions. The large goblin lying on the ground must be the boss, and the small ones trying to loot his body are the mindless idiots. They can't even decide who will keep the wooden club. Two small goblins resolve their dispute over who would be the next boss in the only way they knew: by fighting. Whoever survives is right. If you see goblins fighting, it's better to close your eyes because they are very brutal. They scratch, bite, and use all possible dirty tricks while cursing each other. The rest of the goblin lair naturally feels attracted to the violence. They form a circle and encourage the combatants to finish each other off. Among the audience, a goblin remembered that the boss had left some untouched prey in the deepest part of the cave. Now that technically no one owns the prey, they can go and take it for themselves. However, there's a problem with that plan. There's a guy who fiercely guards the prey. That guy they're talking about is about to return to the place of the prey and watch over it. This individual they're talking about is also a goblin, but he's not like the other goblins. As he walks towards the prey, the rest of the goblin lair looks at him with disgust and hatred. He is widely known as the guardian of the prey, a repugnant creature that covers his body like a human. Some of the goblins think he's only guarding the prey for himself, so they all thought the same thing. They just have to follow the guardian to reach the prey. But some of the more cautious goblins wanted to wait a little longer, since some had already gone to explore the cave to find the prey right after the boss's death. Those goblins are also tough. Once the fight begins, the smarter and more cautious ones can take advantage. Of course, the outcast goblin heard everything those idiots were saying and whispering behind his back. Then he heard screams and the desperate call for help from a woman coming from deep within the cave. This prompted the outcast to run as fast as he could. When he saw the entrance to the boss's room, the pleas for help grew louder. The outcast ran faster than he had ever run and slid into the dark room. The prey was fighting for her life, while the goblins held her down on the ground. She didn't want to give birth to goblin children. The damn goblins and the prey noticed the arrival of the outcast at the same time. She began to cry and plead for help even more desperately as the hot breaths and dirty hands of the goblins touched her body. The outcast appealed to the minion goblins to let her go, but it was in vain. In this room, skeletal remains of all kinds of creatures were scattered everywhere. The largest goblin in the room stood up and confronted the outcast, insisting that the prey now belonged to him after the boss's death. If the outcast did not agree and dared to take his prey, he might die at the hands of those minion goblins. 3 minions attacked him from the front. They were clumsy, but they had the numerical advantage. Dodging is the only feasible move. The outcast couldn't believe that these low-level goblins were giving him trouble defending himself. They ineptly scratched and bit his skin, tearing his cloak, but the outcast gritted his teeth and focused. He can't just die here. He's barely starting. He needs to survive. His desperation led to goblin blood being spilled on the ground. Once the first goblin fell, the other 2 were gripped by the fear of being next. The outcast drew his rudimentary dagger to take down one and scare the other. He raised the improvised blade and threatened to kill them if they didn't leave immediately. These idiots only act bravely when they feel they can overwhelm an enemy, but when faced with real danger, they cower 100%. That's what's happening now. They were so arrogant in declaring that the prey belonged to them, but the first sight of a weapon made them flee for their pathetic lives. The outcast exhaled a sigh of relief. His adrenaline was through the roof. The girl approached him to ask if he was okay and to thank him for saving her once again. Unlike the other goblins, the outcast had never touched her. He would even put his life in danger to protect her over and over again. He doesn't want her to die or be hurt in any way, as he is not like the other goblins. The girl says it, and it has always been that way. This outcast was once also human. He first woke up in the same miserable room where the prey was stored. He didn't expect that. Instead of meeting God after being hit by a truck, he would be transported to another world with a system. Although he has one of those OP systems, it hasn't fully activated yet. Apart from being able to see some of his stats, it doesn't seem to have any other useful functions. However, he hasn't been idle these past few days. He has been talking to this prey woman for quite some time, and from the stories and facts she told him, the outcast has gained an understanding of this mystical world. Unlike the previous world he lived in, this God-created realm harbors various powerful races, creatures, and monsters like majestic dragons and insidious demons. Humans have found their place on this war-torn continent with their fierce strength. As for the goblin race he reincarnated into, they are widely considered the weakest and dirtiest monsters in the realm, the scum of the scum. This is also reflected in their abysmally low stats. Even among the goblins in this cave, he would belong to the lowest percentile in terms of brute power. The outcast's name is 𝗖𝗍, a level 5 goblin with the blessing of God. He has no class yet and has a terrible stat distribution. He has the racial ability to devour genes and is equipped with a rudimentary stone knife. His total combat power is 30 points. In recent days, he has learned that there is a surefire way to become stronger as a goblin, mating with girls. Goblins have the ability to become stronger through constant mating and reproduction, but their race is unable to produce female offspring. So to reproduce, they can only mate with other female creatures, leading them to a life of constant looting and assault. But Lin used to be a human from the modern world, and doing such horrible things is deplorable to him. The girl saw him lurking in the corner and told him not to worry, as after spending these days together, she could understand what was happening. Lin is different and doesn't want to live among these vile goblins. Just by looking into his miserable eyes, it was clear that she hit the nail on the head with her evaluation. She assured him that when the Order of Knights came to rescue her, she would tell them that Lin had saved her. The Order of Knights is known for always being fair. Those guys will definitely let Lin live peacefully in the village. Now that he thinks about it, that idea doesn't seem so bad, does it? The girl certainly raised a feasible idea. Even if he can't activate his system, they just need to hold on until the humans find the lair and rescue the girl, putting her under protection. First, he can survive and then slowly figure out how to activate the system and how it works. Before all that, it seemed they would have to fight some idiots, since the other goblins must have discovered where the prey was. Now that the goblins were coming back for more, 𝗖𝗍 hastily instructed the pink-haired girl to hide in her designated hiding place. Hidden behind the rocks, she watched as 𝗖𝗍 drew his rudimentary stone knife. A desperate goblin was frantically running away from the humans while desperately searching for something to mate with. He wanted to become stronger so as not to be killed. Fortunately, the desperate but straightforward move was easy to predict, and 𝗖𝗍 quickly slit the throat of the goblin Gonar. At least now they know some humans have entered the lair. Those guys might be here to rescue the lady. She immediately got up and ran towards the cave exit, hoping to see the rescue team, the powerful Sacred Order. 𝗖𝗍 followed closely. Upon reaching the place where the action was happening, both observed a knight in heavy armor and a resplendent cape, cutting down multiple goblins with a single she-sword strike. 𝗖𝗍 didn't know whether to feel fear or relief at seeing such a powerful human. Loader is a level 25 human swordsman with impressive stats. His skills include the Chai Sword Slash, the Sword Dance, and the Sacred Sword ability, Return to Heaven. Equipped with the Sword of Judgment and Platinum Armor, his total combat power is 400 points. Compared to 𝗖𝗍's meager 30 points, the difference is astounding. Is this Loader really human? The lady didn't hesitate to run towards the knight, smiling and calling him Commander. Meanwhile, 𝗖𝗍 was looking at the scattered dead goblins. Then he looked up and saw something even more alarming. The knight had raised his Sword of Judgment, seemingly with the intention of attacking the surviving prisoner 𝗖𝗍 had been protecting for days. The small, marginalized goblin barely managed to push the lady out of the sword's path, using all the strength of his weak body. They fell clumsily to the side. Hitting the ground hard is preferable to being cut in half, right? 𝗖𝗍 was confused and alarmed. Aren't these people here for a rescue mission? Why are they pointing their swords at a human? Perhaps because the cave was too dark, they mistook the lady for a goblin as well. Loader looked at the victims, who had dodged his attack so dishonorably. The lady tried to appeal to the commander, introducing herself as 𝗧𝗽𝘆. The despicable knight simply told 𝗧𝗽𝘆 to shut up. Of course, he already knew who she was, but Loader assessed that she must have been defiled by the goblins. She might even be carrying a small, evil goblin spawn at this moment. He thought it ridiculous that such a filthy thing expected mercy from a respected knight. He bluntly told the poor girl to repent of her sins before the great Holy Mother. 𝗧𝗽𝗆, frightened and helpless, tugged at the commander's cloak, begging. She insisted that although she was captured, she was not defiled by the goblins. She pointed to Lin Tian and claimed that, thanks to this brave little goblin, she had been kept safe and away from the rest of the den. 𝗧𝗴𝗀 just mocked her explanation, declaring that if she was going to make up stories, at least make them believable. Only a fool would believe that a goblin. 𝗧𝗽𝗆 could only meet her end along with these despicable and hated creatures. Lin Tian couldn't believe it. Is this really the morality of humans in this world? Something drove him to move and run. He grabbed 𝗧𝗽𝗆 and headed toward the exit on the other side of the cave to escape the situation. Using a simple wooden club, he tried to face 𝗧𝗏𝗀's sword of judgment, hoping to buy a little more time. He didn't expect this outcome at all, but just as the knight's sword was about to split him in half, a mysterious light filled the room. An angelic voice told 𝗧𝗏𝗀 to wait, and the knight obeyed, stopping his attacks and falling silent. Meanwhile, Lin Tian was enveloped in a protective sphere of golden light. A blonde woman wearing a sacred veil and wielding golden magic, surrounded by heavily armed soldiers, found something odd about Lin Tian. 𝗧𝗽𝗆 referred to the woman as the Holy Maiden. She crawled toward the Holy Maiden with hope in her eyes. The Holy Maiden welcomed her with open arms and lifted 𝗧𝗽𝗆 off the ground. She then handed 𝗧𝗽𝗆 over to Commander 𝗧𝗏𝗀 and turned her attention to the goblin enclosed in her golden magic. She asked if he could understand her words. As far as Lin Tian knew, this woman was the Holy Maiden of Freya, the spokesperson of the temple 𝗧𝗽𝗆 had spoken of. If he wanted to leave this place, she might be his only hope. Lin Tian got up and confirmed the Holy Maiden's identity. He stated that he was not a monster of this world and that he used to be human. He had only become a goblin due to an odd accident. He could explain everything in detail if the Holy Order would just take him with them. 𝗧𝗏𝗀 had to admit that the little guy seemed much smarter than the goblins he had slaughtered. Intelligent goblins are quite rare. 𝗖𝗍𝗄 added that goblins are usually stupid and lowly creatures that cannot speak or think so fluently. With this in mind, this little one might be a gift from the Holy Mother. The Holy Maiden looked kindly at 𝗧𝗽𝗆 and confirmed if the goblin was harmless or not. The lady made a vigorous campaign in favor of Lin Tian, saying that not only had he not harmed her, but he had also protected her from the other goblins while providing her with food. 𝗖𝗍𝗄 smiled and decided that, since the little one was so special, they could take him back to the village but would conduct thorough studies before making a final decision. She looked at Lin Tian and asked if he would agree to this arrangement. With no other choice, he trusted the Holy Maiden, known for being a kind and empathetic figure. He agreed to accompany the Holy Order, relieved to have finally found someone willing to listen to reason. Staying in this den only meant death. He might as well go to a human village and prove his innocence. 𝗖𝗍𝗄 raised her hand and made a strange gesture. That slight movement dissolved the golden defensive sphere holding Lin Tian. She turned and ordered everyone to leave the cave. Lin Tian approached 𝗖𝗍𝗄 to thank her for her kindness, promising to repay the favor soon. A twisted, smug smile appeared on the Holy Maiden's face. Lin Tian heard the sound of a blade piercing skin and flesh. He smelled human blood suddenly painting the ground. 𝗧𝗏𝗀 had stabbed 𝗧𝗽𝗆 in the stomach. The moment Lin Tian turned around to see what was happening, he was met with the sight of the surviving lady, who had maintained hope of being rescued, falling to the ground in the hands of her fellow humans. 𝗧𝗏𝗀 even stabbed her in the stomach, thinking that 𝗧𝗽𝗆 must be carrying a goblin spawn. Lin Tian was speechless, frozen in place by the absolute horror of humanity's dark side. He then heard the angelic voice of 𝗖𝗍𝗄, demanding that Lin Tian return the favor once they reached the village. He had never heard anything more demonic in his life. A week later, under the clear blue sky of a peaceful village, the plaza bell rang, demanding the villagers' attention. In the village square, a stage had been set up by the Holy Order as Commander 𝗧𝗏𝗀 delivered a passionate speech to the villagers, the children of God. He emphasized the great damage caused by the recent goblin raid to the peaceful village of Bright. The goblins used despicable and stealthy attacks to massacre 30 residents of Bright, an unforgivable challenge to the Holy Order's authority. Upon hearing this, the villagers relived the helplessness and anger they felt towards the cursed goblins. They demanded blood for blood and an eye for an eye. Humans and goblins are mortal enemies. Loder continued by stating that the Holy Order, in the name of the temple, had successfully purged these hateful goblins, avenging the fallen villagers. The Holy Maiden stepped forward and urged the people to continue praying and offering themselves devoutly to the temple. With her angelic presence, she blessed the village people with a symbol of hope and purity, promising that the temple would always protect its devoted followers. The villagers accepted this act and cheered for the temple knights. Meanwhile, in the Holy Maiden's chambers, the atmosphere was gloomy and dark, seemingly inappropriate for her status and what she represents. Looking at an esoteric text containing dubious diagrams and magical writings, she sighed with relief that today's sermon had been a resounding success. As always, people are as foolish as ever. Holding a vial of red liquid, 𝗖cie, in her casual clothes, was pleased that the villagers prayed even more devotedly to the temple, and in turn offered more tributes to her cause. She was not alone in her chambers, as someone had been locked up there for an entire week. The voice of her captive spoiled her successful propaganda project. Lin Tian had been bound, gagged with a metal mask, tortured in every possible way, had his left eye torn out, and endured the most inhumane treatment possible. Hanging on the wall, his bloodshot eyes shot daggers at the damn witch who had subjected him to a hellish existence. 𝗖cie looked at him with indifference. The goblin still clinging to life was a testament to his strong vitality. No wonder the temple couldn't eradicate these bothersome goblins from the continent. Since she had some free time, perhaps it was time to see how poison affects goblins. Hearing her say all these vile things with her angelic voice made Lin Tian feel sick. He screamed with all the rage inside him. 𝗖cie had deceived him, just as she deceives everyone in the village of Bright. She had even had 𝗧𝗴𝘀, an innocent survivor, killed. This is what the so-called Holy Order does. This is their so-called human justice. Speaking against the demonic Holy Maiden comes with consequences. This time, a wooden stick was shoved deep into his mouth, causing Lin Tian to vomit blood. 𝗖cie found it strange that a weak and miserable creature like Lin Tian, a lustful goblin, would dare to question her concept of human justice. In her mind, this little one had enchanted 𝗧𝗴𝘀. That the lady spoke in favor of a mere goblin was a betrayal of humanity and the Holy Order. Her death was her final loyalty. The Holy Maiden was convinced that goblins were nothing more than vermin on this continent, a race of useless creatures that only bring sorrow. For a Holy Maiden, speaking with a goblin should already be considered a significant favor. She believes that Lin Tian shouldn't be filled with hatred, but should be more grateful. He should use his small, filthy body to contribute to human and Holy Order experiments. Her hand glowed with a golden light as a magical circle appeared behind Lin Tian. What followed was the unbearable pain of being burned by the spell. The magical fire burned away his hatred, leaving him in absolute despair. Lin Tian wondered if this was all he would face, dying in such a miserable state, so against his will. Perhaps it was all his fault for being so naive. Reincarnated from a human to a low-level goblin, he foolishly clung to his human compassion, believing that the Holy Order was just and kind. His weakness and naivety were his gravest errors, leading him to the torture chamber of the Holy Maiden after being brought back to the human village of Bright. Loder and 𝗖𝗀 took turns torturing him, playing with him in every possible way. They never believed a word he said, no matter how much he pleaded. Ultimately, Lin Tian wouldn't last long, being tortured to death by a sadistic witch and her depraved inclinations. His second death was exhausting, the worst way to die. If given another chance, he vowed never to trust humans again. If he could have a second opportunity, he would make things right. Lin Tian, the goblin, would crush their bones and drain their blood. He would make them suffer just as they had driven him to the brink of madness. Well, that is, if he could live again. Lin Tian opened his bloodshot eyes in confusion. He looked left and right, sensing life around him. How was he still alive after all those painfully twisted experiments, and where the hell was he? To answer his question, the system quickly appeared to inform him that the Goblin Life simulation system had been activated. His final assessment was that he died due to his own foolishness. He had forgotten that he was a goblin and that humans would never trust or feel pity for one. He had died in torment, and the pain from this week of torture would be etched in his soul, suffering one of the worst fates for any transmigrator. He was granted a reset for a new life, so this was the system, one that only activates upon death. If he read everything correctly, it meant he could be brought back to life. However, it seemed he would be reborn as the lowest creature once again, a common goblin. To be sure, he asked the system what the options of yes or no represented. It quickly responded that if he chose no, his soul would dissipate, resulting in permanent death. If he chose yes, he would retain his current memories and the system would send him back to the Goblin Cave 1 week before his death. All these parameters might seem a bit confusing at first, but he eventually understood. With a twisted smile, Lin Tian thought this was the universe's way of giving him another chance for revenge. He must repay every sick and twisted thing Loder and 𝗧𝗴𝗀 had done to him. Without hesitation, he chose to return in time and change his decisions. The only thing driving him was a sick desire for revenge. From now on, he would begin his life as Goblin 2.0. No more nice guy act. And that wraps up the first part of our thrilling story. If you want to find out whether our protagonist will achieve his revenge and what surprising twists lie ahead, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss a single chapter of this incredible adventure. But that's not all. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback is invaluable to us and helps us improve every day. While you're here, I also recommend checking out some of the amazing stories in the videos currently appearing on your screen. I'm sure you'll love them as much as we do, and I promise you won't regret it. Thank you for sticking with us to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as we enjoyed making it for you. See you in the next part of the saga, and until then, keep the excitement and curiosity at its peak.